It was a calm afternoon, and Stephen was enjoying a casual ride through the city streets. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows on the pavement, and everything seemed peaceful. He slowed down near a busy intersection, just taking in the scenery, when suddenly, a group of bikers appeared out of nowhere. At first, it seemed harmless, just a few guys on their motorcycles, riding past him. But then, something in their eyes changed. They weren't just passing by, they were targeting him. Within seconds, one biker swerved his bike dangerously close, forcing Stephen off balance. Before he could react, several of them surrounded him, their aggressive postures making it clear they weren't here for a friendly chat. One of the bikers shoved him roughly, and in a split second, Stephen was slammed to the ground. The sound of impact echoed through the street. Passers-by froze, pulling out their phones to record what was happening. The scene was chaotic, engines revving, people shouting, and Stephen on the ground, quickly assessing his situation. But here's the thing. Despite the sudden attack, Stephen didn't panic. He didn't flail, yell, or fight back impulsively. Instead, he stayed calm, moving with measured caution. His eyes scanned the bikers, noting their aggression, and the tension in his body didn't go unnoticed by the growing crowd. Everyone watching could feel it. Something was about to happen that no one expected. The bikers assumed he was an ordinary person, maybe an easy target. But Stephen wasn't just anyone. There was something about him that made even the boldest biker hesitate, if only slightly. A murmur ran through the bystanders. Phones were raised. Whispers like, "Who is he?" and "Is he okay?" spread through the crowd. And right at that moment, a chilling thought hit the viewers. What Stephen does next could completely change the situation. And that's exactly when it happened. The bikers, expecting fear and submission, were about to be stunned. The calm confidence in Stephen's eyes hinted that he wasn't just going to take this attack quietly. Something incredible was about to unfold, something that would leave everyone watching completely frozen in shock. But what Stephen did next shocked everyone standing there, and no one in the crowd would ever forget it. Stephen was still on the ground, but his composure hadn't faltered. The bikers circled him, revving their engines and glaring, expecting fear, panic, or at least some sign of submission. Instead, Stephen's calm presence made them uneasy. His eyes scanned the group carefully, measuring their movements, his hands visible but relaxed. The crowd around them began to swell. People stopped in their tracks, pulling out their phones. Some whispered to each other. Others stayed back, unsure if they should intervene. But everyone could feel the tension thickening. This wasn't just a simple scuffle anymore. Something big was about to happen, and it was clear Stephen wasn't going to react the way anyone expected. One biker, the apparent leader, took a step closer. "Who do you think you are? You think you can just ride around here?" he sneered. His voice was rough, laced with challenge. The others in his gang laughed, confident that Stephen would finally crack under the pressure. But Stephen didn't move aggressively. He stayed calm, steady, and collected. "I haven't done anything wrong," he said clearly, his voice carrying just enough authority to make the leader pause for a split second. It was almost imperceptible, but that tiny hesitation was enough to give the crowd a ripple of hope. People began whispering, curious about who this man was. "He doesn't seem afraid," someone murmured. Another bystander raised their phone higher, recording every second. The tension was growing, but Stephen's calmness was oddly magnetic. Everyone watching was trapped, mentally leaning in, waiting for the next move. At this moment, the video speaks directly to the audience. "Before this gets even more intense, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Which city or country is this story reaching you in?" This small interaction keeps viewers hooked, making them feel personally involved in the unfolding drama. Meanwhile, the bikers grew frustrated. Their shoves became sharper, their words harsher. "Stand up, move aside, or you'll regret it," the leader barked. A few bikers leaned closer, revving their engines as if trying to intimidate him further. The crowd flinched at every movement, some stepping back, others holding their phones steady to capture the moment. Stephen remained grounded literally and figuratively. His body didn't flinch, his gaze never wavered. He stayed silent for a moment, letting the bikers' aggression reveal their lack of control. The subtle power in his calmness began to ripple through the crowd. People whispered to each other, noticing the strange contrast. Everyone expected fear, but all they saw was confidence. Time seemed to slow. Every rev of the motorcycles, every tense glance, every murmured comment from bystanders added to the suspense. Everyone in the crowd and everyone watching the video felt trapped in that moment. The audience mentally leaned forward. What is he going to do next? How will this end? And in that pause, just before things escalated further, it became clear. The bikers weren't fully in charge anymore. Their aggression, once dominating, now seemed reckless against Steven's calm authority. The stage was set for something that would leave everyone, bikers, bystanders, and viewers, completely shocked. The bikers thought they were in control, but what Steven did next would leave them frozen. And no one watching could believe it. The bikers had surrounded Steven now, their engines rumbling like a warning growl. They assumed he would panic, beg, or try to fight back in desperation, but Steven stayed grounded on the asphalt, his calm composure unnerving every single biker. The leader stepped closer, towering over him, fists clenched. "I said stand up, don't waste my time," he shouted, his voice cracking slightly under the strain of anger. The other bikers circled tighter, revving engines, trying to assert dominance. It was a display of raw aggression, and Steven was the only calm center of the storm. Around them, bystanders held their breath. Phones were raised, capturing every second of this tense standoff. People whispered to each other, "Who is this guy? How is he just staying so calm?" Some tried to inch closer, worried for Steven's safety, while others were frozen, captivated by the silent authority radiating from him. Steven's family, who had been trailing behind him, looked terrified. His partner called out, "Steven, let's just leave, please, it's not worth it." His children clung to each other, their wide eyes locked on the scene. But Steven didn't flinch. He didn't argue. He simply looked at the bikers with steady, unwavering eyes. The tension was palpable like a taut wire ready to snap. The bikers grew impatient. One of them leaned down and shoved Steven slightly, expecting him to retaliate, but Steven remained motionless, letting the shove barely touch him. His silence was louder than their roaring engines. The crowd began to murmur, sensing that something was not right for the aggressors. There was a strange power in Steven's restraint. He wasn't weak, he wasn't afraid, and even without speaking, he communicated one thing clearly: he would not be humiliated. Then, one of the bikers made a mistake. He revved his engine aggressively, pushing Steven's shoulder with the motorcycle. That's when Steven finally spoke, calm, measured, yet firm enough to command attention. "Stop. Enough of this. You're wasting your energy on someone who hasn't harmed you." The words were soft, but the effect was electric. The crowd went silent. The bikers froze for a fraction of a second, caught off guard by the lack of panic, the lack of fear, the complete control in Steven's voice. "If this happened in front of you, what would you do? Comment below. Would you run or stand your ground?" Frustration started to creep into the bikers' expressions. They didn't understand this calm force they were facing. They expected fear, not composure. They expected anger, not restraint. And the crowd noticed every micro-expression, every twitch, every pause. Steven's eyes briefly scanned the group. He didn't threaten, he didn't yell, but there was a silent warning there. This wasn't just a man on the ground. This was someone who could turn the situation around, without even lifting a finger. The bikers' aggression began to falter. Their shoves became hesitant. Their words stumbled. And then, one of the bystanders whispered something that caught the attention of everyone nearby. "Wait, is that?" The comment rippled through the crowd. Suddenly, the dynamic shifted. The bikers felt it, the shift in energy, the loss of psychological control. They were no longer intimidating Steven. Instead, they were unsure, hesitant, and exposed. The crowd leaned in closer, waiting for the next move, phones recording everything. And in that moment, just before the reveal, it was clear. What happens next will shock everyone. The bikers, the crowd, and every single viewer watching this video. No one realized who Steven really was until the truth hit, and everything changed in an instant. The crowd was on edge, their phones raised, capturing every tense second of the standoff. The bikers, who had been so aggressive moments ago, were starting to falter, their confidence cracking under Steven's calm authority. His composure was magnetic. Every movement, or lack thereof, made the bystanders lean closer, whispering to each other, "Who is this guy?" One murmured, "Why isn't he scared?" Another whispered. Then, from the edge of the crowd, a quiet voice said something that immediately cut through the tension like a spark. "Wait, isn't that?" Heads turned, eyes widened, phones tilted to focus on Stephen more clearly. A ripple ran through the spectators, a strange mix of curiosity, disbelief, and excitement. Whispers started spreading like wildfire. "That can't be. Is that Stephen? No way. It is him, isn't it? Stephen, the police chief? The guy everyone respects?" The bikers didn't catch the murmurs at first. They were too focused on their aggression, assuming they still had control. But the subtle shift in the crowd's energy was palpable. Every whispered recognition made their posture stiffen, their confidence waver. One of the bikers glanced around nervously. He noticed people pointing at Stephen, murmuring, recording everything. The leader squinted, trying to see what was happening. But he didn't fully understand. He only knew something about Stephen was making the onlookers act differently. The whispers grew louder. Someone closer shouted, "That's Stephen, the world-famous police chief." For a moment, the bikers froze. The leader barked orders, trying to regain authority. "Ignore them. Focus on him." But his voice lacked conviction now. The subtle tension in Stephen's gaze, his calm stance on the ground, and the growing recognition from the crowd were creating a psychological pressure the bikers couldn't ignore. Stephen, still composed, didn't smile or boast. He didn't raise his voice or use his identity to intimidate. Instead, he let the situation unfold naturally. He allowed the bikers' confusion and the crowd's reaction to slowly expose the truth. His restraint made the moment even more powerful. The crowd was now buzzing with excitement and awe. Some whispered about his past achievements, others about his reputation for staying calm under pressure. The bikers could hear it all, though the leader tried to act like he didn't. Even without fully realizing who they were dealing with yet, the bikers began to hesitate. Shoves and aggressive movements slowed. Engines revved more cautiously. They had expected fear and resistance instead. They were met with calm authority, and the crowd's energy made it worse. The tension in the street was electric. Everyone was leaning in, mentally trapped by the unfolding drama. The viewers watching the footage at home felt it too, the anticipation, the suspense, the sheer curiosity of what Stephen would do next. Every second stretched, every small movement magnified. Then, a bystander stepped closer, holding up a phone to show the leader. "Look closer, that's him, the police chief himself." The bikers froze instantly. The leader's jaw tightened. The energy shifted from aggression to disbelief and uncertainty. The crowd's whispers swelled to an audible buzz, every person leaning in to see the reaction. For Stephen, this was the turning point. He didn't shout. He didn't gloat. He simply remained calm, letting the truth slowly settle in. The psychological shift was complete. The bikers were no longer in control. The audience, both on the street and online, was completely trapped by the suspense, waiting for what would happen next. The bikers thought they could intimidate him, but the moment they realized who he really was, everything changed and no one saw the next move coming. The moment of recognition had passed, but the air on the street was thick with tension. The bikers, once confident and aggressive, were visibly shaken. Their engine revs slowed. Their movements became uncertain. The leader's eyes flicked to Stephen repeatedly, trying to mask the rising panic he didn't fully understand. The crowd, meanwhile, pressed closer, phones held high, capturing every single reaction. Stephen finally rose to a seated position, keeping his composure absolute. His movements were deliberate, calm, and controlled. Every step, every gesture, was a silent assertion of authority, the kind of authority that didn't require threats or violence. He didn't shout. He didn't gesture aggressively. He simply looked at the bikers with the quiet power of someone who had faced far greater challenges and never faltered. "Enough," Stephen said, his voice low but commanding. The tone was firm, deliberate, and carried weight not just to the bikers, but to everyone watching. The crowd went silent. Even the rumble of engines seemed to pause. "You're making a mistake," he continued. "I haven't done anything to you, and yet you chose aggression. That stops now." The leader tried to speak, but his words stumbled, lost in the weight of Stephen's calm authority. The other bikers shuffled nervously, exchanging glances, unsure whether to continue or retreat. Their aggression had been met not with fear, Not with panic, but with control. And control is always more powerful than chaos. The crowd began whispering again, audibly this time. He's so calm. Even the bikers looked nervous. Is he really the police chief? The whispers weren't just background noise, they amplified the pressure on the bikers. Every person watching was now mentally trapped in the unfolding drama. Viewers felt it too. Tension stretching tight, heartbeats synchronizing with the standoff. The psychological dominance was unmistakable. The aggressors were no longer in charge. Stephen's gaze swept over the bikers again. He didn't raise his voice, didn't move aggressively, but the intensity in his calm eyes made it clear. The situation was no longer theirs to control. The leader's posture sagged slightly, his bravado fading like smoke in the wind. "Step back," Stephen added, now slightly firmer, "or I will involve the proper authorities immediately. You've already embarrassed yourselves. Don't make it worse." That final line shattered the last shred of confidence in the group. One biker, the youngest of the bunch, muttered under his breath and tried to take a step back. The leader looked around, realizing the shift in the crowd's energy, and finally gave a reluctant nod to retreat. Engines roared in protest, but there was no fight left in them. Have you ever seen someone completely command a dangerous situation with just their calmness and authority? Type yes if you have, or no if you haven't. Comment below. The crowd erupted in quiet applause and whispers of admiration. Everyone present, and everyone watching online, could feel the lesson Stephen had just demonstrated. Aggression can never overpower calm, measured authority. The psychological domination was complete without a single punch thrown, without a single loud shout. Stephen had reversed the entire dynamic. Even after the bikers stepped back, their eyes kept flicking nervously toward him. The leader muttered something, half angry, half impressed, before retreating entirely. Stephen didn't follow, didn't mock, didn't celebrate. He simply stood there, composed, letting the moment resonate. It was clear to everyone, bikers, crowd, and viewers alike, that this wasn't about fear or strength. It was about presence, control, and authority. Stephen had proven, without a single act of aggression, that dominance can be asserted through composure and intelligence. But the real shock was still to come. The full reveal of Stephen's identity would leave everyone completely stunned, including the bikers themselves. The bikers had taken a few hesitant steps back, but they still seemed unsure. The energy on the street had completely shifted. No longer were they the ones in control. Instead, an invisible force seemed to assert itself through Stephen's calm, unwavering presence. Every movement he made radiated authority, yet he remained silent, letting the bikers stew in their uncertainty. Then it happened. From the edge of the crowd, a bystander raised their phone and called out, "Wait. Do you guys realize who this is?" The bikers paused. One of them sneered, trying to mask his growing unease. "What are you talking about?" he snapped. "It's him," the bystander continued, voice rising so everyone could hear. "That's Stephen, the police chief. He's not just some guy, he's the one in charge." For a split second, time seemed to slow. Engines revved nervously. The leader's jaw clenched, his knuckles white around his bike handles. His mind raced. The same confidence that had fueled their aggression moments ago was evaporating, replaced with disbelief and panic. The crowd's reaction intensified. People started whispering loudly, pointing at Stephen, some cheering quietly, others gasping in shock. I knew he looked familiar. That's insane. The police chief? Wow. He's the one in charge of the whole department. The bikers could hear it all, and the realization hit them like a wave. The psychological pressure that Stephen had been building with calm authority now collided with their fear of exposure. Their aggression, once loud and commanding, turned inward, their bravado crumbling under the weight of his true identity. Stephen didn't need to say another word. His composure alone was enough to humiliate them. The leader stammered, trying to find some shred of dominance, but the words stuck in his throat. One by one, the bikers' postures slumped, their bravado gone. They were no longer a threat, they were exposed, humbled, and acutely aware that the crowd and the world were watching. Have you ever seen someone instantly make a group of aggressors regret everything? Type yes or no in the comments. Some bikers muttered apologies under their breath, shifting uncomfortably on their bikes. Others simply mounted their machines and revved the engines in a weak attempt to save face. before slowly retreating down the street. Every step away from Stephen was a reminder of their failed intimidation attempt. Meanwhile, the crowd erupted into murmurs of admiration and quiet applause. Phones continued to record, capturing the biker's retreat and Stephen's composed stance. People couldn't stop talking about his calm authority, his restraint, and the way he had turned the tables without violence. For Stephen, this was never about humiliation or revenge. He didn't gloat. He didn't yell. He didn't make the bikers feel smaller. He simply allowed the moment to highlight the lesson. Respect is earned through composure, intelligence, and self-control, not aggression or intimidation. As the bikers disappeared into the distance, some glancing back nervously, the crowd stayed behind, buzzing with awe. Every person who had witnessed the encounter, both live and online, now understood the full scope of what had just happened. The tension, the suspense, the threat, all resolved not through force, but through the quiet, commanding presence of a man who refused to be intimidated. The psychological payoff was complete. Viewers watching from home felt it too. The bikers had underestimated Stephen. The crowd had been swept up in suspense, and the emotional release as the bikers fled was satisfying, almost cathartic. With the bikers gone and everyone watching in disbelief, the story didn't end on the street. It went viral worldwide, and Stephen's lesson about composure and authority spread like wildfire. By the time the bikers had disappeared down the street, the crowd was buzzing with disbelief, excitement, and admiration. Phones were still recording, capturing every second of Stephen's calm, composed stance as the aggressors retreated. People couldn't stop talking about what they had just witnessed. "Did you see that?" one bystander exclaimed. "He didn't even need to fight them, he just controlled the situation." "Yeah," another whispered, and they froze the moment they realized who he was. Incredible, but the story didn't end there. Within hours, videos of the encounter were uploaded online, spreading rapidly across social media. Millions of viewers worldwide watched the footage, captivated by the tension, the suspense, and the ultimate reveal. Comments flooded in, praising Stephen for his restraint, composure, and ability to turn a dangerous situation completely around without a single act of violence. The bikers' failed intimidation attempt became an object lesson in how aggression can backfire when faced with calm authority. Viewers were emotionally hooked, mentally replaying every moment from the sudden attack, to Stephen's unshakable calm, to the shocking reveal of his identity, and finally to the bikers' humiliated retreat. What made the story so powerful wasn't just the confrontation itself, it was the lesson behind it. Stephen had demonstrated something far more valuable than victory. In a physical sense, he had shown that true authority doesn't rely on aggression or fear. It comes from presence, composure, and confidence. He had turned a tense, potentially dangerous encounter into a teaching moment for everyone watching. If you think respect comes from calm authority and composure, type "respect" in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. News outlets and social media pages picked up the video. Analysts, commentators, and viewers everywhere dissected every frame. The bikers' aggression, the crowd's reaction, and Stephen's deliberate, measured responses. It became a global story, a viral moment that inspired discussions about restraint, leadership, and the power of staying composed under pressure. Even long after the street had emptied, people kept replaying the footage, sharing it with friends, and talking about the psychological shift they had witnessed. The bikers' failed attempt to intimidate had become a powerful lesson not in humiliation, but in the value of respect and self-control. And Stephen, he didn't boast, he didn't gloat, he simply allowed the moment to speak for itself, showing that authority and dignity can win every time without ever raising a hand in anger. The moral was clear. Aggression can intimidate, but calmness commands. Fear can provoke, but composure earns respect. And in a world where people are often judged by appearances or assumptions, the true power lies in how you carry yourself, even when faced with danger. The story ended not with conflict, but with understanding. Not with fear, but with admiration. Not with chaos, but with a message that resonates across the globe. Respect is earned through calmness, confidence, and integrity, and everyone watching could feel that lesson deeply. If you believe no one should be judged by appearances, and that true authority comes from composure, type "respect" in the comments, share this video, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories like this.